Episode 318. Too exhausting. This little guy had actually remembered that until now. Serena felt suffocated and looked up at Jake. Jake came over and pulled her up. His bright eyes dimmed as well. Serena didn't know that Jeremy would have such a reaction and comforted him. "You just came back. He's just not used to it. He will be better." Jake grabbed her hand, his eyes and voice soft. "Maybe." When the old man sat on the sofa and heard the words of Jeremy, he felt uncomfortable, but even more guilty. These words were what he had said to the children. In order to make the children help Serena accept Henry, he often said in front of the children, "Uncle Henry is likely to be your father in the future, so you must listen to him." So, he seemed to have done something that was not very good. The old man pretended to turn around without knowing anything. He picked up the remote control and turned on the TV. The doorbell rang. Emma opened the door, and it was Keith. When Keith entered the door, he saw Jake immediately. Widening his eyes, Keith almost ran up and gave him a big hug. Jake laughed silently and patted him on the back. Keith's eyes were slightly red, and he hit his friend hard. "What have you done the past few years?" Jake had just taken a few hits on the back. Gasping, he pushed him away and said, "Something big." "What thing?" "Shit, what could have driven you away for so many years?" Jake did not explain, blocked his fist and asked, "Where's Jackson?" "That guy?" Keith sighed. Looking at Jake, his expression was complicated. "How did you survive? I thought..." Not only him, but many people thought he was dead. Keith always thought that Serena was crazy, unwilling to accept the facts. But now that he saw Jake standing in front of him, he suddenly realized that she was not crazy at all. In fact, she was more sober than anyone else. She had finally brought this person, who should have been dead, back to life. Hearing this question, Jake chuckled. "When Jackson comes over, I'll tell you both. I owe him." Although he did not know much about the exact situation of Jackson in the past few years, he still had an idea. After Mary's abortion, as the best friend of Jackson, he should stand next to him and get him back on his feet. Who knew what had happened? With the nature of the guy, although he will not say, but Jake knows, Jackson must be very guilty. Keith nodded and picked up the phone to call Jackson. This time, Jackson answered. "Hey?" Jackson's voice came through. Jake took the phone in Keith's hand and called, "Jackson." There was a moment of silence, and there was a loud snap. It sounded like the phone had fallen. Keith became quiet, and so did Jake. There was a moment of silence, and there was a loud snap. It sounded like the phone had fallen. Keith became quiet, and so did Jake. There was the sound of more things dropping. After a long while, Jackson's voice was heard. Pretending to be calm, he asked, "Keith?" "It's me," Jake said quietly with a little hard-to-detect smile. When Jackson heard this voice again, his breath accelerated, and he was tempted to ask, "Jake?" "It's me," Jake repeated. Jackson had lost his voice. He said after a long while, "No way! Jake?" Jake had a hint of smile in his eyes and joked, "I haven't seen you for more than 4 years. Are you stupid now?" Jackson felt that he must be dreaming, pinched himself, then hung up the phone and initiated a video call. It was picked up soon, and the face of Jake appeared in front of him. "Are you alive? Still alive?" Jackson asked, his face full of disbelief. "You are still fucking alive, not dead. What do you think?" When Jake said that, Jackson only felt he was on fire, but at the same time, his eyes were immediately covered with fog. His eyes hot and red, he excitedly asked, "Where are you?" "Home. Old house." "Wait for me. I'm on a business trip in the capital." Jackson immediately called his assistant. "Wait for me. I'm on a business trip in the capital." Jackson immediately called his assistant. "Help me book the fastest flight back to Austin." The assistant said, "But they're still waiting for us to sign the contract. There's an event with Liam tomorrow and the day after tomorrow." "Cancel all of them." Jackson waved his hand, and the assistant looked a bit troubled. "No need." Jake stopped him and felt a bit amused. "Business first. I will not believe after coming back this time." Jackson heard this and saw the assistant's worried look. He sighed and nodded. "Okay, wait for me." "Of course." Jake smiled slightly and reached out with a fist to bump it against the screen of the mobile phone. Jackson also reached out a fist. The assistant saw this and went out again, closing the door behind him. For the first time in the entire conference room, only Jackson was left. Jackson's heart was torn, and when he sat back in his chair, he had even more difficulty in breathing. Finally, he came back. He was still alive. He was still alive. He finally came back. How amazing! He's back. What about her? In his mind, a face that had been away for 4 years reappeared. Her arrogance, fierceness, and behaviors were vividly engraved in his mind. 4 years ago, she aborted his child and said mercilessly, "Jackson, do you think you're charming? No joke, I have been very clear from the beginning. I want your money. Now that I have enough money, it's only normal that I want to break up with you. Why do I want to have your child? I'm not that cheap. I did that deliberately. I don't want your child. So I took the medicine to get rid of it. Now that you have fucked me, it's only you. You killed your own child." At that time, he was so angry that he slapped her and almost choked her to death in bed. In the end, the nurse came in time and asked someone to pull him away. Mary's eyes were red and she glared at him and roared, "Jackson, you will regret it." Regret? The only thing I regret is to sleep with a woman like you. Because of you, I killed my brother. Unless he becomes alive again, I will never have anything to do with you for the rest of my life. Get lost. Do not appear in this city later, otherwise I will find someone to kill you, bitch. Too exhausting. It was too exhausting to keep a woman who did not like him around. Jackson put his elbows on the table and held his head in pain.